myself.
Okay. Okay. So basically what I'm going to talk about is the ability to see what changed in the database from a table perspective. If you perform a certain action, and this can be any system, it doesn't have to be DNN, but DNN in particular, because it's database intensive, it's beneficial to do that. So there's a couple SQL tools that probably most people that have done any sort of debugging are familiar with. There's the SQL Server Profiler, the Database Engine Tuning Advisor, and then if you're at 2008 or more, there's an activity monitor. And the activity monitor has something like the recent expensive queries that you can show that'll basically tell you, help you try to solve bottlenecks. But I wanted something for this particular case. We were trying to understand what was changing from the data perspective in the database, something a little more specific. So for that, so basically I was trying to tie it to an individual action. So if you did this particular site is the default Evoke Social site, and I think it's like 2.0.1. But basically, again, it could work with any site. It doesn't even have to be DNN. But I'll show you an example. So basically, this script is it's pretty small, but it creates a table, and then when you run it, it basically tells you from the last time you ran it what tables have had rows changed, either added or removed, and which tables have at least been touched with an update statement. Now, that update statement may not have actually done anything, but you at least know what it's potentially attempting to update. One of the things I've come across in the past is you could do something within DNN, say within host settings or within admin settings, and then you try to figure out what it actually changed. So let's say you changed a setting and you thought it was going to be in one table, and then you realize it's not there, and then you're like, where's that setting? So this will help with something like that. So the probably easiest to just do a quick walkthrough, an example. So in this case, I'm going to run this once, and you'll see again there's two different sections. Oh, the other thing I'll mention is if you're doing this on any DNN site, you probably want to shut off the scheduler. The DNN has a couple jobs that run in the scheduler every minute or every 5 minutes. The easiest way to do that is probably to dump into a temp table all of the scheduled items that are enabled, and then you can run an update to basically disable them, and then you would probably want to do an IS reset just to make sure it picked those up. And then once you're done with all your testing, you can run an update of the schedule to re-enable them. The other alternative is to go into the scheduler and actually do them one by one. But if you've got 6 or 7 or 10 things on, then you probably do it. The nice thing about this is it won't touch anything like frequency or anything. So this is basically all you're doing is disabling it and re-enabling it when you're done. So that's specific to DNN systems. But the script itself that I wrote is not. The only thing I'll caution is it does use a standard system stored procedure, which is up here somewhere. Let me see. Right here. It's an MS for each table. If you're on a shared hosting environment that is really locked down, you might not have access to that stored procedure. But again, typically this is probably something you would be doing locally just to see kind of what's going on. If you try to do this on a live site, of course, if there's other people on it, you're going to get all kinds of noise. So again, this is probably something you're going to do more from a local perspective. So I ran this, and the other thing that you'll notice is I didn't filter out, although all I'm filtering out is event log, schedule history, and then this table itself, because this table is going to get written to every time you run this, so you didn't want to, it made no sense to have that show up. But if you're doing this against something and you've got like analytic tables that you don't care about, you could put those in the script as well and filter those out and get rid of the noise. So once you figure out if there's certain tables that you really don't care about, you could add those and kind of make it even less less convoluted in terms of seeing what you actually wanted. So, oops. So again, the idea is that, you run it. So in this case, we're going to do something. We're going to say we're going to add a group, and we're going to get to the point where we're actually adding the group. And at this point, we're going to run this. And we can run it a second time, and then it should be clear. So now if we put in the information we need for this, then oops. Then once we're done with this, we can now run the statement. And as you can see, a lot of stuff was different. So again, this top window, it's two selects basically. The top window is just the things where the row count changed. So in this case, that particular action caused all these tables to have stuff added to them. So in this, so actually, I guess this row is added. I'm going to have to check my calculations because some of these look a little weird. Actually, I guess they're okay. I was just looking at the wrong set. So here's where, again, you would need to go in and have an actual understanding and say, well, these three that are analytics, they're probably not relevant in our particular case. They're for capturing some metrics. You may not care about those. But the ones you do care about, you know, these might be the ones that you care about. Things like messaging, you may not care about. That's something where in this case, when you build a group, it's notifying people to basically approve the group, things like that. You may or may not care about that. But again, the nice thing is it basically gives you a window into what's happening. And then I added the second piece. The second piece is just the tables that were touched that, again, did not have records added or subtracted, but just the tables themselves were touched with like an update statement. And again, the reason I did that is, let's say you were to go into a feature and it doesn't add any records, but you're curious to know what tables it actually touched, what tables it ran updates against. It'll do that. So the last thing that I added to the script was I filtered out, because an update is, this would also show the ads. There was a lot of overlap, and I thought that's kind of irrelevant because in my particular case, at least, if the records changed, I cared about that. I didn't need to see them in the update portion as well. But in this particular case, so something happened, it's the user scoring. So odds are then the fact that I added a group, I got some points or something for doing that, and therefore it updated a statement, but the statement was there, or the record was already there, so it didn't show up here. So again, this is kind of, it's kind of generic, and it's kind of neat in the sense that, at least for me, it gave a better understanding. DNN is a heavily database intensive CMS, and the nice thing is it's starting to capture almost everything in the database. Early on, at least, we dealt with some third-party modules that used to write a lot of XML files to the file system. But so when you would change properties in a system or a third-party module like DMX, Document Exchange, early on, often they wrote XML files into the file system. This wouldn't tell you that. This is strictly looking at the tables on the database. But again, most systems have gone, or I'm sorry, most modules have gotten to the point where they're capturing stuff in the database. They're not writing as much to the file system anymore. So, so to me, I thought this was kind of useful. And again, it's kind of interesting even to run it and just kind of see what, sometimes you have a benign action that you don't think is very database intensive, and then all of a sudden you realize, you know, this thing touched, you know, 15, 17 tables. So it's kind of interesting to sometimes see all the stuff that's going on. So again, it's just another tool in troubleshooting, in addition to like the activity monitor, in addition to the activity monitor, and then the SQL Server Provider and the Database Tuning Advisor. So those are obviously useful as well, but this is kind of a quicker way to kind of see what was going on in terms of the database.
Hey, Phil.
So that's about, I think, all that I was going to say. Yeah,
Yeah, I have a question. Can you, would it be possible for you to do a blog post on Chicago DNN and post this code for other people to take a look at? Is that something you could do?
sure.
Sure. Awesome.
Oh, that'd be cool. You know, you were saying about debugging a problem, and you're struggling with um, how something works. Another use for this, as I'm watching, I'm saying, oh, I could have really used this. Um, Sometime back, we had a client that was registering their events using InVent Manager's registration tool, and something was not going quite right. Probably maybe configuration on my part or something.
It's 9 o'clock.
But what I wanted to do was I wanted to pull some of the information from the InVent Manager into my own report. So I wanted to use Report Writer, or DNN reports, I should say. And so I did, and what I did was I did it all by hand using SQL Server Studio, looking at hunting down, guessing what tables were what, and guessing what the relationship was, because there was no mapping of what that relationship was, and figured out, and it took hours. Figured out what tables were getting impacted and what the basic data structures were. So something like this, if somebody had a use for pulling some of the data from an existing module and using it in a different way, but not having the source code or not having the they're just wanting to get something using reports and doing a simple SQL select to pull the information out and put it up on the screen. Something like this would be very helpful in figuring out what's what.
Yeah, and I've actually thought of it for potential other tools. Sometimes you might have a case where you would want to run it once a day and see if, like in the case of the spamming thing, where you could just kind of see what was happening to your database and if things got irregular. So if all of a sudden you started seeing, each day hundreds of users and that type of thing. So I mean, you could customize it to obviously have it be, specific to certain tables and stuff too, very easily. But it's just kind of one of those things where, like I say, in this particular case, it is nice because the one case I had too, where I added the update as well, because and I forget exactly what setting it was, but there was one setting in DNN platform that you would change. It was either under host or under admin, and I swear it was in a place that was totally bizarre, at least for my mind. So I spent probably one day, I probably spent a good 2 hours hunting for this setting where this dang thing was, and it wound up being in some weird table that that I totally didn't expect it in. So yeah, I could definitely see this. And like I say, this isn't even DNN specific. Anything that runs on SQL Server, you can use it for. So
Yeah, when we post it, we should talk about that it's not only DNN but SQL Server. But boy, this is great for the DNN community. People that want to do a little, diving in. They may not necessarily be whether the developers or not. I mean, my use of it at best, I might be considered a DBA, but not a hardcore developer of modules. I would just wanted to use a module, and the report writer basically does most of it for you, except that little piece thing there that's called the SQL statement. And if you could figure out where the information was, you could you could show it to people. But the trick is knowing where the information was, and so this is a great little tool to find out. So thanks. This is great. I'm glad that you spotted the generality, applicability of this little testing thing that you wrote. Fantastic.
okay.